Hey, this is the Lazy Money Machine, Graham Brown and Erik ten Haver. And we're talking about keeping things simple on the road to financial freedom. Keep it simple. Are you a simple man, Erik? I mean in the best of terms. Simple, not as in stupid. Are you simple? Do you have simple tastes, or are you quite fussy?
No, I'm quite simple in that sense, and I've become more.
What about your clothes? Are you like, do you have to be in designer clothes, or are you like shorts and sandals?
No, no designer clothes for me, not at all.
Right. Were you ever like that as you man?
But some people. Again, it's also a matter of perspective. I'm afraid. Like I'm simple in those kind of things, but I do like to. If I would have a chance, I would like to travel comfortably business class. But that's sort of for a lot of people, that's like posh, right?
Yeah, but I think that's slightly different, isn't it? It's more about the experience and convenience rather than stuff to impress other people.
Yeah, and I'm really I'm into things, but mainly things that have a value for me because I can use them for something, or how shall I say this? I mean, if I would buy a watch, I've had times where everybody around me was buying fancy watches, and I go like, why do I need a fancy watch? And then I bought one, and then I find like, okay, if I wear it, then people say, oh, that's a nice watch, but I go like, what's the point here? Why would I need that?
You're just impressing other people, right? And
you're definitely impressing other people, and that for me it's not so important anymore. And I think, I think if you do that, you tend to get hooked up in a race to the bottom or a race to the top. I don't know what it is, but you're on a sliding scale whereby it has to be better and fancier, and every time.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's manufactured in a way. And I think it's realizing that it is manufactured is an important part of that process of stepping outside of it. When you realize that a lot of what we believe is valuable or fashionable isn't really. And it's all kind of created, this narrative, through advertising and so on. So the article I wanted to share today, Erik, is from the Washington Post, which is, I suppose, I talk about stepping outside of all of that, but you only really get the opportunity to do that when you're faced with real adversity. And sometimes that's death. Sometimes it's natural disaster. So here's an article which talks about a family, which unfortunately were in the middle of things when Hurricane Irma barreled through Florida this summer.
Oh, man. Okay.
And just wiped everything out. And what they found was that they lost all their stuff. And that's what a lot of people had. A lot of people, it wasn't necessarily, blown away. It was damaged by flooding or, and a lot of people, they had evacuated. So they'd left their home for some period of time, and then they'd come back to the home. So there was that whole process of leaving and coming back and, looking at things with fresh eyes, new eyes. And they talk about this one family, the Curlemans, and after they evacuated and they came back and they said, I was prepared to start over with what I had with me. I could live simpler. And this whole article talks about how this family had built up a lifetime of crap, like you and I probably have done naturally, but everybody does. But when they came back, they decided, actually, we don't need all this stuff. So everything, talking about furniture, clothing, technology, sports equipment, all that stuff was destroyed. But now they said actually they could live a happier life or a simpler life just by living without this stuff. And I find that amazing. It's like, wow, if that hurricane had never happened, they'd still be living with all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, wouldn't celebrate the fact that the hurricane came, because obviously that's a disaster.
Yes.
But why does it take such adversity to make us think about what's important for us?
Yeah, I think, that's the time whereby you have no choice and you really look at it and realize what you've done, right? You've built a life where you collected a lot of stuff in your life, and then it's all gone in one moment, and then you realize, well, actually, I don't really miss it that much. Just want to mention one thing. I interviewed a guy called Cedric Waldberger. I have another podcast, Job Insanity podcast, where I interview people like Graham. He has other podcasts. And this guy, Cedric Waldberger, he's in my episode 8 of the Job Insanity podcast. This guy has currently 44 physical items only. That's all he has. He has no house. He has no place where he lives. And what he tells me is that by doing that, he's a startup investor. He runs an agency back in, I think it was in Switzerland. He says, by doing that, it's not so much that I want to prove that I can live with very little. It's more that because I have so little, I value the experiences in my life so much more. So because I now travel with little, I have to stay at other people's places. I have to interact with people. And reducing stuff in your life is, does that to you, I think. And, minimizing things. In one of our previous episodes, I was just thinking about, I'm just trying to find the number. We had this Dutchman who is a heavy investor in Bitcoin at the moment. And he started traveling the world with his family, sold everything for Bitcoins. And then he came back. His name is Didi Taihutu. He's in Lazy Money Machine 20. And when he came back after his trip with his family, he decided to really scale down and live on a campsite. He doesn't live in a tent. He lives in a small, how do you call it? A small house on a camping site. But by doing that, he has a lot of money spare, and he invests all of that spare money into Bitcoin. So this thing comes back many ways where minimizing stuff in your life is for most people has a really positive effect, I think.
Yeah. I don't think everybody's prepared for it, and it's not always positive, but I think on balance it is. I mean, there's ups and downs. When we sold up and traveled the world in 2012, we packed everything into 3 suitcases, and this was a family. So putting it into 3 suitcases, that's already, we valued on all we had. And I know I've told that story a number of times to people, but there's a part of the story that I haven't told that I want to share, because it comes back to this, is that we moved to New Zealand and we took 3 suitcases with us, but there was a box of stuff that we wanted to bring. So there was stuff that we couldn't pack. So we packed this stuff in these boxes and loaded it onto a container ship.
Yeah.
And a container ship going from London to New Zealand takes forever.
Yes.
Right? Because it comes by ship and it stops everywhere en route, around the Cape of Good Hope and all that. So, we were in New Zealand, and we decided after 2 months in New Zealand, we were going to move on. We were going to move to Fiji and then so on, because we could travel light. Once we started traveling, we thought, well, let's keep going.
Yeah.
But we had to wait for the container ship to arrive with all our stuff. And luckily it arrived just before we were going to head out, but we literally had like 3 or 4 days before, we were due to fly out. And we had this container ship of stuff, and I broke open these boxes and we looked inside and thought, actually, we don't need any of this. There was a few photos which we took, but everything we gave away. We gave away so the guy who ran the hotel where we're staying, he had grandchildren. So we gave away all the toys to them.
Yeah.
And they were really happy, obviously. And just stuff, like, do you want this coat? Do you want this leather jacket? Fine, we just gave this stuff away, and it felt really, really good.
Yeah.
And I have to say that it's there's amazing power of giving stuff away.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that sense of freedom when you walk away from that was, wow.
And it needs I think in my case, it needs to become a habit. Because you can do this once, but it doesn't mean that you're cleaning up your life regularly. For me, I've sort of now at the point where if I feel like there's too much stuff in my life, I go like you, I give it away, or sometimes if it's really valuable, I sell it. But I make an effort to get it out of the house and out of our sight and out of our lives. I have a similar story to yours. When I moved to Indonesia in 1997, I had an apartment in Den Haag. And the apartment was full of furniture and stuff. And I had subleased it to somebody else, including the furniture. And then 3 months down the line, this guy turns to me and cancels the lease on me. So I had this apartment that had to be cleaned out. So my brother, bless him, went and got a company, or I got the company, but I asked him, can you please be there when they do it? And they basically packed everything up in a storage unit. And then I think it was 5 years later or something. I had never moved it to Indonesia, of course, because I came here with a suitcase. I never brought anything here. And then a couple of years later, I decided this is crazy. I'm paying all this money to store this stuff in a place.
Right, you paid 5 years of storage on that?
Yeah, I think I don't know exactly how long it was, but years, not even. It was quite long. And then I pulled it out, and basically they had packed everything, including the herbs of the kitchen and everything, and the oils and everything. So I threw most of that away. I took a few things out because it was all cheap furniture. I just came out of university, so it was all cheap furniture. Most of it I tossed away, and it was the same thing. I never missed it. I never used it again, and it's. Yeah, the attachment to physical things makes you, I think, inflexible, and makes you also, be spending time on things that are not really important in the end.
Well, it takes up mind space, doesn't it?
Yes, that's absolutely.
You're thinking, obvious example being a car, because you're worried about the car, and that takes up energy and so on that you could use elsewhere on people that count. There's also the financial factor. I mean, you talk about 5 years storing furniture. It probably worked out cheaper just to throw all the stuff out in the beginning, but you didn't know that, right? But I think looking at the data here in this article, 10% of American households have a storage unit. Which is phenomenal, really.
I'm not surprised.
What are they storing in there? And I think everybody has a house may have this situation where one room becomes the storage room, right?
Yeah.
And I think of this in terms of property. If let's say you rent a 3-bed house, and that costs, just for argument's sake, $1,000 a month, or you could rent a 4-bedroom house and that costs $1,200 a month. It's $200 extra for the extra room. Now, if that ends up becoming storage, or you have a room full of storage in your house, ask yourself, how much are you paying for that? Because effectively, in that context, you're paying $200 a month for storage in your own house.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking of it like that, you think, oh, FUCK, that's terrible.
Yeah, and I mean, the money side is one side of it. I'm not surprised. I mean, I'm always surprised by these self-storage businesses. I mean, America's full of those things, and Europe is getting fuller and fuller of these things as well. The UK, I mean, if they turn all these old mills into self-storage units, I think, what on earth are people putting in these self-storage units? It's unbelievable.
Your herbs, man. It's all the herbs from the kitchen.
That's right. And only the fact that, you can't part with physical things. I think it's such a good habit to start to learn that you can part with physical things. I think you don't need to be overconsumptive and, buying lots of new things all the time. But I think, having one very good expensive suit beats having 4 of them.
Yeah. Agreed on that. Some things you should pay for, like shoes and suits, and that's it.
Yeah,
just
for
one
instance,
good pair.
But you don't need. Actually, I mean, it depends a little bit on your work and what you do. But I mean, usually you don't need many of those. And I think just being really limited in what you want to do. And the other thing that I would say is, if you're at the point, if you're listening to this, and you're at the point to buy a house, buy one without an attic or a basement or storage rooms. Do not buy a house with an attic or a basement. Please don't, because it's going to end up being full of stuff that you think you might want to give down to your children when they have children, or those kind of things, right? It's like it gets loaded up with things, and it's clogging up your mind as well, I think.
Yeah, time to declutter. So if you have experience of decluttering, if you're part of the Lazy Money Machine group on Facebook, then let us know. Share your experience when you listen to this podcast episode. It'd be good to know what's working, what isn't working out there. And if you're interested in the themes and issues that we're talking about today, Erik and myself, go and check out lazymoneymachine.com. You can go and sign up for free on our 5-part course, which will get you started on the road and thinking about a lot of the issues we talked about: financial freedom, passive income, as well as staying focused and decluttered. This is the Lazy Money Machine. It's been Erik ten Haver and Graham Brown.